It's the Channel Mom Show with Jenny Dean Schmidt. We're here for you.
Brought to you by Pediatric Dental Group of Colorado, creating positive and rewarding dental visits for kids of all ages since 1977.
The Channel Mom Show, we are here for you, Mom. I am Jenny Dean Schmidt, your host. We are right here on Mile High Sports Radio, AM 1510, FM 93.7. We're so glad to have you. We really are here for moms. We dedicate our show to moms. Also want to just acknowledge all the people that have gone through so much heartache this week in Waco and in Boston, of course. I'm a prayer, so I've been praying this week for people. I want to explain that we are honoring the anniversary of Columbine today, the 14th anniversary. I wanted to speak to moms and let them be updated on what's going on in schools. Do they really need to worry? Have things changed? Are things safer? You know, after Sandy Hook, I know a lot of parents were panicked about even bringing their kids to school in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to be talking today to both John Michael Keyes, who lost his daughter Emily in the Platte Canyon High School shooting in Colorado in 2006, and also to Sheriff Fred Wagner, who was the Park County Sheriff when that unfolded, and he was part of all that. And Sheriff has taken a lot of steps to make schools safe, and John Michael has taken a lot of steps. So John Michael's going to talk to us about that today. John Michael, the first question I want to ask you is I know I called you after Sandy Hook just to say, do you want to chat about this? And you said, I'm not ready. So when something like Sandy Hook happens, and when something like the Boston Marathon happens, where people are killed innocently, I mean, they are innocent. The killing isn't innocent, but they're innocent. Does that always bring something up for you? And what does it bring up?
I call it spinning up, and it always does, and I think it always will. We're, both Ellen and I, very cognizant that in the immediate aftermath, let's understand what's going on before we talk about it.
Yeah.
And so rarely do we talk immediately after an event.
Yeah. But does it bring up something for you about, is it sort of like post-traumatic stress where you have to, you think, oh my gosh, and suddenly all of your pain about Emily is regurgitated, or does that not happen?
Well, the D in PTSD disorder,
yeah.
Sometimes I like to replace that with decision.
Oh, okay.
And certainly when intrusive thoughts happen, it's a very real thing, but there are decisions that we can make during that process that might help.
Emily was precious and beautiful. I want everybody to know that. And smart.
And fiery.
And fiery. That's a good thing that's a good thing to add. It makes her more unique. Shelley had a question, though, and I want her to ask it because she asked it to me last night.
Well, my question was here we are we 7 years out?
Almost
7 years out. How are you feeling? How do people treat you now?
Well, I think, I've made some personal choices. One of the things I do is talk about the events both on September 27th and in the aftermath. And today, it certainly is part of my life, losing Emily. And I'm just very cognizant of the fact that one of the things that Emily gave us was a voice, and that story can be a foundation to transition into other stories on how we can help protect kids.
Yeah. You seem so stoic. Do you still shed tears about it?
Not on the air.
Yeah. That's a decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I get it. When you miss Emily, when you know what you happened, when you see, that it was tragic, when you see that it was untimely, when you see that her brother's growing and thriving and she didn't get the opportunity to continue to do that, is there something that you get out of acting? And I want to tell people what you do get and what you're doing. And does that help you? Does it help you in Emily's memory to be doing some of the things you're doing with the I Love You Guys Foundation?
Oh, absolutely. There's Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. I attended one of his presentations. There's a story there. It was a police protective league and cops only in the room. First break, a couple of cops came over and said, "Sir, what agency you're with?" And I said, "I'm not," and told the story. And they said, "That's good, because if so, you'd been undercover much too long." But David Grossman, he says during that presentation that talking about the events can help disassociate the emotion of the event. And
so it's healthy.
Absolutely. And in the last 3.5 years, I've done over 200 presentations in front of folks, whether it's 4 people in Firestone, Colorado, or 1,000 folks in New York City.
Yeah.
And so I get to talk, and it's It's my therapy.
Yeah, and she admit that. So tell us. I know you feel very passionate about what the I Love You Guys Foundation is doing, and I want to remind people that when Emily was about to die, I didn't know it necessarily. She did text her family, "I love you guys." I think maybe she had an inkling that she was going to die, and she wanted you guys to know. So she texted her precious family, "I love you guys," and that is why you named it the I Love You Guys Foundation. Tell people what you're trying to do for schools, what you're trying to do through the speaking that you do. Tell them about standard response protocol, something you're really trying to help institute in a number of schools. And I also want to talk about prevention, because I want to explain to folks, and we're going to talk about this when Sheriff comes on, that really your chances are still only 1 in a million that this can happen to you. And I want moms to breathe a sigh of relief today, because it's only 1 in a million. It's not, it seems much nearer. And
That's what makes the headlines.
yeah, that's right. So your chances are really only in 1 in a million, but that doesn't mean we don't need to work to prevent it. And I did some research before the show. I was struck by the things we can know in advance about the people that are doing it, about the kind of school environment you could set up to prevent it, the kind of, where you're emotionally involved in your school. You love your school. There's reinforcement, encouragement there, and so on. So go ahead, John Michael. Tell us what I Love You Guys Foundation is doing to help make schools safer, and how you're getting your therapy about to speaking to other people.
Well, and you hit on a key component. I think the national conversation is focused on a single issue, but school safety is a spectrum.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of slices in that school safety pie. And you touched on climate and culture and threat assessment. And how do we keep kids feeling safe on a day-to-day basis? With the standard response protocol, we've had some interesting side effects. The protocol is basically 4 actions: lockout, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter, that students, staff, and first responders all know and have all trained on, so that they share the same language and expectations of behavior in a crisis.
Yeah.
But that little segment has caught on as a foundation and as a impetus to really galvanize the school safety spectrum. And so
Explain that. You're a smart man, so let's explain that for people that may not have understood that terminology.
the schools that bring the standard response protocol into the classroom start to see kids feeling safer. We've seen a remarkable increase in Jefferson County, the first district to implement it in the country. And you see school safety teams begin to expand their safety program, because this is a non-intimidating, non-threatening protocol that students, staff, and parents get. And by implementing it, it begins to create the rest of the spectrum. We're strong proponents of the Safe to Tell program here in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's an anonymous tip line. Fabulous program, has done amazing things.
My kids have used it.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can save lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have. They've had over 800 suicide interventions.
That's amazing. I mean, that's potentially 800 lives saved right
My
there.
kids have done it. They've called for suicide prevention.
Yeah, yeah. So go ahead.
And there have been others. They've intervened in 28 planned school attacks, nearly 1,500 bullying interventions. And so there's a program that works, boots on the ground, that helps kids feel safer and be safer.
Yeah, yeah. And they feel cared for. And I think that even potential shooters that might do something to dissuade them, because they suddenly feel cared for in that environment. Even my 10-year-old daughter, who is part of the Platte Canyon School District, knows the difference between a lockdown and a lockout. Students did not know that 10 to 15 years ago. They just didn't. But you're right. You're educating them. You're arming them to understand how to take care of themselves. Now, of course, ideally, you want the teacher or the administrator to be in charge. But it probably puts the child's mind at ease that they know what's supposed to happen, what's supposed to unfold. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the thing that we as adults need to pay attention to, is that kids are smart, kids are resilient, and training for a lockdown drill, while initially stressful, it gets easier for the kids. And when something happens, whether it's human violence or just a natural event, we're seeing a body of study that kids who've drilled are more resilient, hence recovery is easier.
You are now going to school districts and saying, hey, make sure that you're incorporating the standard response program and the training that goes with it into your schools, because it's actually going to have a preceding impact. It's not necessarily just even an after the fact impact because it's putting kids' minds at ease. Yes,
Absolutely.
you're also trying to do something that you explained to me just before the break, other than standard response protocol. Tell me about that.
One of the things that we've seen is that reunification of parents with their kids after any sort of event where that accountable reunification has to occur, where crisis intervention may be necessary. Schools don't have a plan for that. And I was in Wiggins, Colorado, where a principal told me after the presentation, we do a fire drill every month, but I never thought, what if there's really a fire? How do we get the kids and parents back together?
Oh, yeah. So they're not thinking about that.
And our method increases accountability, accounts for some logistics in how to manage just the people flow so that parents can feel comfortable getting their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important. I mean, even with Sandy Hook, you saw that there was some confusion and gosh, you don't want that to be even worse, where there's chaos and there's bound to be chaos, but you're trying to eliminate some of that chaos. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We don't talk a lot about how to prevent. Now, there are school environment things we can do. There are things to deal with kids who are maybe suffering, who are thinking about shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing, the threat assessment component in school safety, giving kids permission to and the strength to break the code of silence when they see or hear something that's out of the normal. And then the school's got to have the ability to assess that and come up with an intervention.
Yeah. Yeah.
And school is the safest place for kids statistically.
Compared to what? Like
Compared
airports
to
or
even
malls?
home.
Oh, yeah, compared to home. Well, here's the interesting thing is I happen to think a lot of this is also in homes, that you wouldn't have shooters if there wasn't a problem in homes.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how I don't want the government to get involved in that, but I ache for that. It's one reason we do this show. Is because I feel like in our society now we've come to a place where we don't honor motherhood, we don't lift it up. So some moms check out because they get more honored for having a 6-figure salary than they do for mothering a child and raising the next generation because it's been underplayed. And man, parenting is important. I mean, I think it's the most important job we can have before we die. So that's why we do this show. And John Michael, we're so glad to have you. You're going to continue with us. Coming up, we're going to have Sheriff Fred Wagner.